I can just do kind of like a broad overview. And as I'm kind of going, feel free to, interject if you have a specific question that might help with the story or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so with Outlast, I have played it as well. Um, and as you can imagine, it's quite different to the actual things that, actually went on here, right? It kind of is that more so, obviously it's a horror game, but more so that geared towards kind of the popular myth of what institutionalization was in the 1800s and even into the 1900s. But basically, when it comes to the site specifically and kind of what went on here, again, I can be try to keep it relatively brief. But so essentially, New York State leaders, 1860s, after the Civil War, they realized that there's really no asylum, mental health facility, almshouse, really, whatever you want to call it, that is well equipped enough to service the western half of the state. The closest one at that time was all the way in Utica. So you can imagine pre-automobile, even with railways, you send a family member there, good chance you're probably not going to see them too much. So basically, a bunch of townships in our area, Buffalo, Mayville, Warsaw, and some others, they throw their name into the hat to hopefully be the site of a new state-of-the-art mental health facility. And in 1869, Buffalo gets chosen, and there's kind of a few reasons why. One, city leaders, they set aside 203 acres of green space. That's one. Two, they promise free water in perpetuity from Scajaquada Creek, which runs on the northern parcel of the property. And three, at this time, as you're getting close to 1900, as you probably know, Buffalo is one of the largest cities in the U.S., eighth by population. We also have, at least so it's said, the most millionaires per capita anywhere in North America. So this was a bustling, growing city that's building its art galleries and history museums. Why not add another architecturally profound and sort of public works project into the mix? And kind of twofold with that is if you need workforce, supplies, materials, you know, you have this bustling city right nearby. So basically, that is why Buffalo ends up getting chosen. And just like for your reference, that 203 acres was originally from about Forest Ave to Elmwood to Grant, all the way to the Tops Plaza, to the north there near Church of the Assumption. So it was a pretty large piece of property. But so who gets involved with the project? So the Richardson is one of about 73 Kirkbride asylums that are built throughout the 1800s.
Mm.
You probably saw that name floating in and out as you were, kind of looking at the Wikipedia page and stuff like that. But basically, Dr. Thomas Story Kirkbride, Quaker background. He's born outside of Philadelphia. He's trained as a general surgeon. In his early 30s, he's given the opportunity to become the superintendent of the Philadelphia Asylum for the Insane. Not necessarily his training, but he decides to kind of go for it anyway. And he becomes the leading voice on asylum care for the next 50 years or so in the 1800s in the States. And basically, his treatise is on the general construction, organization, and arrangement of hospitals for the insane, with some remarks on insanity and their treatment that gets way shortened down to basically the Kirkbride plan.
Mm.
And it's there that he details both the physical form that he wants his buildings to take, so the architecture, the floor plans, etc., as well as the actual treatment that he's looking to have take place. So basically, he was one of the first physicians that felt that a building and an environment can have just as much of an effect on the healing process as your standard treatments. And that's why many call the Kirkbride Plan hospitals the first scientific architectural response to healthcare. So basically, that's the Kirkbride piece. He's never really on site to make it happen, right? We basically just plug into his idea.
Mm.
And in 1869, the two people that are actually on site are Frederick Olmsted, who had already designed the Buffalo Park system. Why
Mm.
not call him on board for this 203-acre public works project? Plants about 250 trees, 2,000 shrubs, designs all the swales and pathways. Um, there's more to that, but that's all right. And then the second is H. Richardson, of course, and just a little bit about him. He's born in Louisiana, um, born to a slaveholding family. When the Civil War came around, he wasn't exactly sure what side to fight on. And instead of picking one or the other, he says, I'm going to go to France and become an architect. So he goes to France, trains there for a little while, He actually trains underneath some pretty well-known architects. Basically, when the war happens, his family doesn't have the money anymore to just front his education. He has to labor, we'll call it, in a draughtsman's office. Theodore Labousse, I'm not French, but that was his name. And basically, it's there, coincidentally, that one of the first projects he helps on is a mental health hospital in designing it. So he comes back to the States, and again, if this is too much, you could just
No,
cut
no,
me
no.
off
This is all
anywhere.
great.
But
This is all great.
okay, so he comes back to the States, and while relatively untested in his early 30s, he has two really nice routes into the Buffalo Project. One, Olmsted is his neighbor on Staten Island. The two have offices in Broadway, New York City, that are pretty close to each other. They just had sort of a lifelong friendship after meeting each other, kind of two creatives, and Olmsted vouches for him. And two, local Buffalonian, a lawyer, future politician, William Dorshimer. He had a house built by Richardson a few years before at 438 Delaware, 434 Delaware Ave. It's still there today. And coincidentally, Dorsheimer, he's one of these Buffalo elders that's on the board to bring an asylum to Buffalo. So
Mhm.
basically, of Dorsheimer, you have Olmsted. They say he's a young guy, untested, but why don't you give him a chance? Comes on board, and the facility first opens for the first time in 1880. But if you're facing it from Forest Ave, only the right side was finished, only the eastern half. Basically, this is an extremely expensive project out of extremely expensive materials, all sort of aimed at being a private facility, more aimed towards your middle and upper class families. Kirkbride saw this as more of an acute facility. You'd come here for a year to 2 years after, a severe depression or like death of a family member, engage in things like environmental therapy,
Mhm.
calisthenics, exercise, kind of the idea that if the physical body can feel better, the mind would follow.
Mhm.
So opens in 1880, again, with this huge emphasis on the environment. All of the wards are 180 plus feet long, super high ceilings, all for this fresh air, sunlight. In that 203 acres, there was about a 100-acre working farm where patients engaged in agricultural therapy. The South Lawn, 9-acre green space, had baseball diamonds on it. They would do fairs. It was very much so almost like a retreat rather than a hospital, I guess, in the classic term. But yeah, so 1880 comes and goes. The state isn't too keen on funding the rest of the bill to finish the western side. Richardson actually never got to see this project complete. He died in 1886 before they even started the other side. This was, though, however, the largest commission of his career at about 550,000 indoor square feet. And this was also the first time that he sort of takes everything that he learned in France, takes sort of that Gothic and Romanesque style from the cathedrals there, and interprets into his own distinctly American style,
Mhm.
Richardsonian Romanesque, where he borrows some of those more Gothic elements, but what categorizes his style is sort of the choppy, uneven sandstone in a lot of his buildings. Um, but unfortunately, yeah, he never gets to see it done. He passes away. 1890, New York State finally gives the funding for this place to be finished. And in 1895, as originally envisioned, a central building, in our case, the Towers building, with 5 wards on either side, separated by the sexes. What really kind of marks the downward swing, we'll call it, of the care here
Mhm.
was that in 1890, when New York State says we'll give you the funding, basically it comes with the caveat of you have to transition from a private facility to a public one.
Mhm.
So built for 660, now you have the homeless, the almshouses, the jails, those with more chronic issues that aren't necessarily going to be solved in a retreat setting are, lack of a better term, rounded up and brought here. And by the time you get into the 20s and 30s in the 20th century, there's close to 4,000 patients living in a building made for 660. So really, when you kind of look at this place, it was incredibly well intentioned,
Mhm.
really sort of state of the art when it was built. But if you think about science and how fast it moves, Kirkbride wrote his book in 1854. This place wasn't even fully done until almost 1900. Science moves pretty fast, and things definitely started to change.
Right.
And really, it is that kind of downstate legislation that kind of flips the place on its head. And you can imagine the relative decline that occurs as you get into the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and then eventually they replace it in 1964 with the Psych Center that's still if you're familiar with the property on the south side, the Buffalo Psychiatric Center,
Yeah.
um, basically leaving this place more or less abandoned for about 30 plus years. So skipping some details in there, but yeah, basically as you get into the 2000s, something meant to be this sort of gold star source of pride for the community. Like, look at this amazing public work that we did, becomes the exact opposite. Abandoned, falling apart, somewhere to break into, somewhere where urban legends and scary stories are told, because nobody's actually watching the property or talking about it.
Right.
And in 2006, the nonprofit I worked for, the RCC Richardson Center Corp, they sued the state of New York. They're awarded the property as well as many millions to start redeveloping the site, basically just recognizing one, its location, two, those involved, and three, kind of its lasting architectural legacy, and really sort of just breathing new life into it, whether you are a hotel guest, whether you're here on a tour, or just reminding people that this is an Olmsted designed parkway for people to enjoy, with their dogs playing frisbee, kind of whatever. And to close it out, kind of the two big things look into the future, which might not be part of your article, but whatever. One, we're in the process of building the Lipsey Architecture Center.
Mhm.
So on the northern side of the property, we're adaptively reusing the men's kitchen building with an expansion. And we have plans for early 27 to open a 13 exhibit architecture center
Nice.
dedicated to Buffalo's architectural heritage, which is a huge, huge project. That's kind of one. And two, in July, we said goodbye to our former tenant, and we can leave it at that. But since July, the nonprofit has directly been overseeing hotel operations as well. I don't know if that's super helpful. That's kind of like a spit out generally of kind of what happened here. But if you wanted to ask more specifically about like any of that might help inform you for the story, please ask away.
So yeah, so you mentioned Kirkbride and like his plan and like how he wanted the building to be a specific way. Was like the Romanesque style, was that like part of it? Was that like did he go to Richardson and say, "Hey, this is how I want you to do this," or did Richardson just kind of make it all up on his
So, as far as I know, there was actually no direct communication between the two of them.
own? Okay.
Really, Kirkbride lays a plan, and
Mhm.
then city leaders across the U.S., when they go to build new mental health facilities, they say basically like, "Oh, this is what we should follow." And when it comes to the actual kind of the facade, we'll call it, right? Because they all follow the same floor plan, but they all look pretty different.
Mhm.
Not all of them are Richardsonian Romanesque.
Right.
They're all pretty different. I think this one being that style is what has given it a little bit more kind of national recognition.
Mhm.
Because some are just like wood and timber, some are, they're all different. Just depends on whatever local architect was hired.
Right. And now, I guess like this is more of a subjective thing, but like how do you think the Richardson lends itself to being like a backdrop for like an artistic venture like this? Like not even necessarily horror or not even necessarily video games, but like I guess being such an impressive structure. How do you think, I don't know, how does it lend itself to artistic ventures, I guess?
Well, whether it is that genre or not, I would say kind of the coolest thing about it when it comes to like movies and things like that is studios spend millions and millions of dollars on CGI on making buildings that look like the one that I get to sit in every day. Um, physical locations kind of speak for themselves, and whether you're going for the more horror angle or just a time period correct
Mhm.
angle. Um, this is probably one of the more austere buildings that you're going to find in the
Mhm.
United States. So it lends itself, I guess, pretty well when you're going for that certain angle.
Right. I think it looks pretty cool. And they are making an Outlast film. I talked to the writer of the games last night. Um, I tried to get it out of them whether or not they're gonna kind of recreate the first game or if it's gonna be totally new
A separate
story.
thing.
He was playing coy about it, so I didn't get anything about it, but we'll
I
see.
haven't I haven't heard anything. Usually that would make its way across my desk, so I
Right.
can, I can let you know if I hear
Yeah.
from somebody.
I would
Um,
imagine he's probably gonna do a new story, but who knows? I think it would be cool if like I said, Richardson is such a beautiful and just like impressive. It's a giant piece of art, and I think it's amazing. And I think I was reading about the architecture exhibit opening, and I didn't realize it was going to be as big as it is. Like you said, 13.
13 exhibits. I think we're sitting around 15,000 square feet.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So it'll be, basically placed with the Albright and the History Museum as kind of and the Birchfield as kind of the fourth anchor in this kind of little cultural corridor, as we call it.
I know in the email I sent you, the big three, Richardson and Wright and um,
Sullivan, you're good.
Sullivan. Yeah, Guarantee Building.
The only
Um,
other city outside of Chicago that
yeah.
has all three.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I guess I didn't know that, so I'll put in something about that in the story about how we're the only one outside of Chicago with all three, because that's really cool. And then, like, I mean, even outside those three guys, though, I mean, the what's the hotel, the other hotel downtown? The one,
With Bethune, the Hotel
uh,
Lafayette.
Hotel Lafayette, also extremely impressive architectural piece. And I don't know, City Hall, obviously, like I think having an architectural specific museum, such a great idea and such a perfect place to have it. So yeah, that's very
Yeah,
exciting.
no, we're excited. We've identified about 100 buildings that will be included. So we're trying to hit everything. And yeah, really, I've been starting to see too, kind of Buffalo architecture get used more and more in
Mhm.
national media.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I'm not really a big comic book movie person, but the last Batman or Batman 2, the Robert Pattinson one, they
Mhm.
put out their movie poster and it has Buffalo City Hall in there in like the background. It's interesting the things that are getting picked up for movies and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah, and City Hall also, what was it? Nightmare Alley with Bradley Cooper. Couple
right,
years
yeah,
back. Yeah, just
yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
actually
incredible
the
architectural city. Oh, sorry, were you gonna
the
say?
Richardson, I don't know if you saw it in your passing, but the hospital scenes from The Natural with
Yes.
Robert Redford were actually filmed here. Okay, yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, I
wasn't sure
did
if you
see
saw
that.
that one. Okay,
Yeah. All right. Well, Patrick, thank you for taking the time today to do the interview. You answered everything I have, and I only had to ask like one question, so I appreciate it. Um,
perfect. Yeah, and if you as you get in the writing process, if anything jumps out to you, you have my email, so you can drop me a line.
cool. All right. Well, thank you again, Patrick. And like you said, if I have anything else, I'll shoot you an email.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.